Michael Valdes took one company from 20,000 agents to nearly 90,000 in just 4 years. Then he left. Why? To build what is the fastest growing brokerage model in real estate history, LPT. In this episode, Michael pulls back the curtain on what agents don't see, the brand confusion inside the biggest holding companies, how luxury brands are getting diluted, and why the next real estate boom will be won right now by the agents who prepared during the bust. We'll break it all down, from his early days selling $6 million penthouses in Miami to running global expansion for Sotheby's, Realogy before they were anywhere, and EXP, to why he's betting his career on a new two-model system that's already rewriting how brokerages scale. If you want to understand where the industry's actually heading, this is the conversation you don't skip. Let's get into my sit down with LPT International CEO, Michael Valdes.
2008, 2009 was the best year I ever had in real estate. Everything really changed. I mean, the world changed for everyone, but in banking, it specifically changed. So I got licensed when I had acquired over a dozen properties in Miami. My first sale was a $6.4 million sale, which was the penthouse of the Fontainebleau. My second one was a $12.8 million door knock on Fisher Island. And then through a series of circumstances, met the person who had owned the first franchise for Sotheby's in the United States. He sold everyone from Stallone to Madonna in the 80s, continuation to Ricky Martin and Shakira, and on and on. He had an incredible career, and he said, I want you to run my company. I said, I'm not interested in running your company. I moved to London for 5 years, ran the European network for Sotheby's.
I want to go macro with you on everything going on in the industry.
Yeah. Came back to the States and started running all of the international expansion for them.
And now you're on top of an exponential growth train.
I joined them in May of 2020 and grew that company from 20,000 agents to just shy of 90,000 in 4 years' time. I was able to open up 24 countries for them in less than 3 years' time.
But I want to take you back into time at the coffee table. What worked then that still works today, converting a seller in this market?
What makes your story different? And then I met Robert Palmer at the Super Bowl, and that's where it started. And it excited me because it was completely different. And at this point and this stage in my career, I don't want to do anything that doesn't allow me to have the greatest amount of impact for others.
If an agent's thinking about that approach, one, is it practical? Two, how do you do it?
When the dust has settled, I think there's only going to be about 10 brands left.
All right, Michael, we got a chance to chat about all the different things you've done in this industry. The agents you've worked with certainly know your name.
Yeah.
I bet you a lot of people listening to this today know who you are and what you've accomplished. But for those, that small segment that maybe doesn't, I mean, Deutsche Bank to now being at LPT.
You're going to go way back.
Yeah,
I love it. We're going to do the greatest hits.
I want you to just give me the quick timeline for just that small segment of the listeners that don't know who you are. Give a little context and then we'll jump in.
So as you mentioned, I was an investment banker with Deutsche Bank for almost 10 years. Left banking in 2003, right after 9/11, the world changed, right? Risk management changed, everything changed. I was actually in New York City during 9/11. I saw the second tower hit. So it was it was dramatic, and everything really changed. I mean, the world changed for everyone, but in banking, it specifically changed. And so I think there's a shelf life for an investment banker before you become inhumane. And I think that decade period was right where you get ripe almost to your expiration date.
You were about to go axe cap.
I think that was it. And so I moved from New York, and I actually moved to Miami and started getting property and got licensed for my own portfolio. So I got licensed when I had acquired over a dozen properties in Miami. And then through a series of circumstances, met the person who had owned the first franchise for Sotheby's in the United States. And that happened to have been all of South Florida, some Caribbean islands. And it was really, he had the first reality show on in our industry back in 2004.
Wow. Sirhan before Sirhan.
It was way before Sirhan.
Wow.
This was 22 years ago. And his name was Carlos Justo, and it was $1 Million Agent. And he used to show properties via helicopter and then land on the properties in Miami Beach area.
Wow.
And so he sold everyone from Stallone to Madonna in the 80s. Then it was like continuation to Ricky Martin and Shakira and on and on. And so he had an incredible career and started as this reality program. And so we had mutual friends in common. I met him. And he said, I want you to run my company. I said, I'm not interested in running your company. And so long story short, it was very convincing, and I went to run his company. I did it for about 6 months and then realized that a lot of people were making a lot of money. And so I actually jumped into production. And in the first year was ranked in the top 1% of all realtors in the state of Florida, and really went from there and stayed always in that luxury space. My first sale was a $6.4 million sale, which was the penthouse of the Fontainebleau in 2005.
Oh boy.
And so we went from there. My second one was a $12.8 million door knock on Fisher Island.
Wow.
And so it really just continued to go from that trajectory.
How many years in production?
About 5.
Wow.
And then
that's super unique at the
to have an
executive
yeah, it's so
at the
true.
executive level in our industry to have done 5 years of real production, not like dabble
Absolutely.
production or
Oh, no.
license holding. This
Yeah,
is
no.
like doing the biggest listings in Miami.
Really running a great team and doing that and understanding that perspective. It's interesting you say that because it gives me a unique perspective for the agents at their level, knowing that they're sitting across from the seller at a kitchen table trying to get that next listing, knowing that they start from zero every morning. And that's really something that any decision that's made on a corporate level and an executive level has to be made with knowing that agent in mind. And I think that's what makes, me a little bit unique in this space, because you're right, there's very few at this level that were ever an agent and know what they go through. And when you start looking at the really large companies, none of them are even licensed.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting perspective when you start looking at that. But anyway.
Do you still maintain your license?
I do.
Yeah,
I have
great.
a license in New York and Florida.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's like, it keeps me honest.
Yeah.
It keeps me in the, I'm not in production, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But it keeps me in the game and understanding, the new CE that you have to go through every 2 years, and understanding what the new laws are and understanding the why behind the new laws. So it keeps you really abreast of the industry from an agent point of view, which I think is super unique.
It's been a long time since Dr. Dre has released like a new song where he's actually doing the lyrics, but
That's right.
he's involved
100%.
in the background of a lot of the music we listen to today.
100%. Yeah.
I like that.
So in 2010, I actually jumped over to the corporate side of Sotheby's. And Mike Good, who was the CEO of Sotheby's and my first mentor in real estate, said to me, hey, have you ever thought of moving to the corporate side? And I said, nope. And so he says, would you think about it? And I said, what are you getting at? And he says, we're looking for a VP in Europe to go and do our European network and to build that out. And so it was really interesting. We started chatting. I chatted with Philip White, who was then the president and now the CEO. Of
course.
And so we got to a understanding. I moved to London for 5 years, ran the European network for Sotheby's, came back to the States and started running all of the international expansion for them. Last 2 years that I was at Realogy, I ran global expansion for all 7 brands for Realogy, which was Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, ERA, Better Homes and Garden, and Corcoran. And then met Glenn Sanford at the Inman in December of 2019. We started talking about what an EXP global could look like. I joined them in May of 2020 and became the chief growth officer. Grew that company from 20,000 agents to just shy of 90,000 in 4 years' time.
The exponential growth years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was there from day one.
Yeah.
And of that growth years,
of that period of time,
which was really it was a combination of COVID. It was a combination of really having a deliverable that was not office based, really being able to create a community around some agents that were lost during COVID.
Sure.
And it was a perfect storm, if you will. And so there was exponential growth. I was able to open up 24 countries for them in less than 3 years' time. And then I met Robert Palmer at the Super Bowl 2 years ago as a invited guest of Andy Florence.
There were so many people in that room.
There were 40 people.
I mean, I hear more stories
people.
from that room.
Oh my God!
From
it was
Andy's
crazy.
suite at the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
That was it.
I mean, I hear so many stories.
So that
about
was the Vegas one, right? And then last year was New Orleans. And so I've made the last 2 years.
Congrats.
But there's only 40 people that are there in that room. So everyone that was there in Vegas, I had known. This is my 23rd year in real estate, except for Robert and his wife. So I'm like, I'm going to go sit with them and go watch the game and get to know them. And that's where it started. And then we started a a friendship. And then he was telling me what his vision was for back then LPT and then now LPT and Aperture. And it excited me because it was completely different. And at this point and this stage in my career, I don't want to do anything that doesn't allow me to have the greatest amount of impact for others. I've already done that. I don't need to work anymore. If I do, I want to do something that's going to impact others. And I really felt as though this is it, and this is what we're growing, and it's been amazing.
And now you're on top of an exponential growth train, which I'm going to get to a little bit later. And I want to dig into some of the stories of the day.
Sure.
But before I do that, I just want to take you back in time.
Okay.
Because, I mean, everybody listens like, whoa, if they never knew who you were, they're like, man, he's done everything. Sotheby's to start, Realogy, EXP, LPT, and with the growth, if you know about the LPT growth, you'll learn a little about it more at the end of this pod when I get into that. But I want to take you back into time at the coffee table during that 5-year period when you were winning listings that everybody in your market wanted. Agents today, whether it's luxury like you described or the median price point or below, they're sitting at a kitchen table.
That's right.
Looking a seller in the face.
100%.
What worked then that still works today converting a seller in this market?
Look, I think that you have to figure out what your differentiation is in a marketplace because you're right. Everyone is competing for that same piece of the pie. What makes your story different? And so I'm not the one that was born and raised in Miami. I was born and raised in New York. And so the moment that I'm entering into the Miami market at a luxury level, most of those sales are happening with the people that they went to private school with.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that wasn't me. So I decided that I'm going to go into a niche market of foreign buyers coming into Miami. And they were buying Miami almost as a currency hedge. This is when you had the oligarchs and the Russian billionaires buying Miami. They were my banking clients. And so I went back to what I knew. And I came back and I showed them where they can look at this as a financial instrument. I'm not saying that's what you should do with real estate, but you show where your strengths are. And when you have that differentiation, you grow a business from that. So you have to understand what the needs are of that client right now. We're in a difficult market. This market is the lowest number of transactions that have ever happened in our industry, ever. So we're in a sub 4 million transaction number right now. At the height of the financial crisis, we were at 4,050,000 homes. And so when you start looking at this, this is the worst time for us to be able to do what we do. And that kitchen table becomes much more important.
And we have more population than that time. So I would argue it's even more suppressed.
100%. Yeah. I mean, when you start doing those analyses, it absolutely is. And when you start looking at that, you start absolutely having to be that person that solves the problems for the person that's sitting across. And so that becomes something that doesn't change. When COVID was happening, we had a lot of people that were just order takers.
Yes.
These were people that I always sort of say they were no different than the barista making your Starbucks coffee. And people get really pissed off when I say that, but it's true. By the time that you listed something, you had 8 offers by it was dinner time. And I want to know, like a lot of those agents, they just took the highest offer, presented it to that seller, and they were done.
Yeah.
What happened to those other 7 offers? They were still your colleagues. They were still your community and your industry.
Yeah.
So did you actually act in the best way for that client? Was it just the easy thing to take the top number and present it and be done and go to the next? There could have been a better offer in that pool of 7 that it would have been interesting to go and spend the time with. Most of those people are out of our industry right now. Because they saw a lot of the reality shows. They saw the shows that showed everyone in a Lambo and sort of like making multi-million-dollar commissions. The worst thing that happened is that some of them did it.
Yeah.
And they didn't have the skills to remain in the business. So when we now had the shift and it became a buyer's market, all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't know how to do this. And they're left. And so that becomes the responsibility of this agent that's in the business now to understand that it is a business.
Yeah. The buyer market shift is super interesting because all of a sudden people are like, well, I wanted listings before and I don't. I'd argue that you do want listings in this shifting market.
This is when you absolutely want it.
You want the listings because as things turn, you want the inventory and you want to be in the discussion of who should I give my listing to, it's a lot of times it's, well, who controls inventory? I should at least bring them in on the pitch.
That's right.
I started my career at Sotheby's as well. So I know you did.
In which market?
And so it was right after the recovery. It
Okay.
was so 2012 in Connecticut.
All right.
Connecticut bottomed out in 2012.
Yeah,
that was the
I
true
remember
bottom.
actually. Yeah.
And
that was a corporate-owned office in Connecticut.
Yeah. So you had Paul Bernick, and,
Yeah.
and he's got a bunch of obviously independently owned
Sure.
franchises off of that. But during that time period, people were, and I see it now in the Floridas and Texas and some of these states where there's agents that are like, yeah, I don't want to get a listing because there's an upfront investment and it's starting to take a long time to sell. And I got to have all these conversations with the sellers. I'd argue quite the opposite.
100%.
Now, it was easy to get a buyer.
Yep.
It's easy to get, not easy, but you can go get a listing if you have your differentiator, like
That's
you
right.
mentioned, and it's a real opportunity to pick up market share.
You show your value, right? Our entire market is cyclical. People forget that. So this is, I mean, how many down markets have you seen? I don't know how long you've been in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I went bankrupt during the great financial crisis. I went bankrupt 2008.
Okay.
December 31st, 2008. Bought 3 homes from the age of 19 to 21.
Got it.
On 4 mortgages.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to real estate. I wasn't listening to guys like Michael.
Right.
And getting connected with the people in our industry that have seen a bunch of markets. So during the mortgage crisis, I got wiped out. I had to recover. I got my license 2011, started 2011,
Yep.
2012 during that down market and started building from there. So, I started in a, what was a buyer's market, but in that time frame in Connecticut, there were no buyers.
Right.
You would list something,
Yep.
and if you got one home tour in the first 7 days, you were doing well.
Absolutely.
Then we had Superstorm Sandy that came through.
I remember all of that.
Wiped out all the waterfront.
Right.
We couldn't sell waterfront for 3 years.
Yep.
Everybody was talking 50-50 FEMA. Everybody was talking flood insurance. And so, yeah, you could get listings. There were no buyers. It was a buyer market if you had them and they were ready to buy in Connecticut, but everyone was leaving. And then I've seen a more neutral market from that period to call it 2020.
Yep.
Extreme sellers. And so I've kind of moved through all three through the years.
Let me tell you something. 2008, 2009 was the best year I ever had in real estate. And it was obviously nobody was buying luxury, right? So you need to pivot. If you're a luxury agent, you have to figure out who that buyer is now. And at that time, this is what people need to sort of remember. It's sort of like you have zero to do as the agent on the price of that property. That's between buyer and seller, and the price is determined by the market.
I agree.
Not you, right? And
Yes.
so people get their ego involved in this equation, and that's when you lose.
Yeah.
And so I knew that I wasn't going to sell a $7 or $12 million house in 08 and 09. They just weren't going there. And so I shifted, and I went back to my banking days. And that's when there were these things called vulture funds. Vulture funds came in 08 and 09. They were usually a spin-off of hedge funds. They were looking at properties in Miami and Las Vegas, the 2 cities that fell by property value by over 50%, right? And so they came in, and they put me on retainer to come in because I spoke their language. And I could tell them that I could find the opportunities based on their parameters on what they needed. And that became my best year in real estate because I was handling 3 of these vulture funds. And it was like, look, my colleagues hated me because then it was like we were writing contracts like crazy because we were discounted on the 50% discount already. And so
they hated the number they had to present to the seller because they didn't know how to position the number, to your point.
I wasn't the bad guy.
They were attached to some emotional comp that they gave them, and you were showing them the market.
Listen, I was the offer, right? So that was the market. They had nothing to do with me, had nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
We don't determine price. The market determines price. Guess what? We probably close about 60% of what I presented to them.
That is a lesson, everybody listening right now. The offer that I get is nothing to be held.
Nothing to do with you.
It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to be held against the agent.
Absolutely not.
Right? And a lot of agents make the mistake of being emotional about the comps that they presented to the seller at a certain time. And I would argue that 7 days, 14 days later, the market has completely changed anyways.
Absolutely.
Because things have changed in that time period. And maybe you were reflecting a 2-month-old market to begin with because that's where you pulled the comps from. There's a framework to pricing a property. There's strategies to positioning the invitation for the buyers.
100%.
And then through that positioning, we find out what's what.
look, you have a fiduciary responsibility to that client, and it's including the client. How many times has a client said, don't bring me anything under $2 million? I'm just not going to see it. Okay. You have to bring them everything, period. You have got to bring them the 1.6, the 1.7, because guess what? That morning might be the day that his wife left him. That might be the day that, God forbid, his mother had a terminal illness, and he needs that sale. You could have actually been his savior, but you took a conversation to heart, and that's not your fiduciary responsibility. Your fiduciary responsibility is to give your client choices, whether they tell you to or not.
Yeah.
So you could preface it any way you want, and you say, "Look, I know you said not to give you anything under $2 million. Anyway, here's a 1.6. It just came in. You should know about it.
You should know about it.
Period. You're not the bad guy.
No.
You're not doing what they asked you to do, right?
Yeah.
You said don't present it. It's like, I'm letting you know it's out there.
Yeah.
You're offering information.
I'm letting you know it's out there. There's a couple different things we can do with it. We can just decline it,
Right.
not respond to it. We can freeze them out. That's a strategy. Or there's a strategy we can go back to them and work something. Which one are you leaning towards?
Yeah. Or just let them sit with it.
Yeah.
Let it marinate. Right.
Freeze them out.
Yeah. Because at that point, now you're putting your seller on the line, right? It's sort of like, because he may not want to tell you that his wife left him that morning or whatever it is, and he'll just sit with it, right? And it's sort of like, here, this is what just came in. Let me know what you want to do with it.
Yeah, I love it.
And leave him that space, right? That space is sacred at that point, because it allows you've just given them the freedom to actually not go back on their word, right? Because if you sort of say to them, what do you want to do now? You push them into a corner, and they actually sort of like have to make a decision. Well, I already told him that I wasn't going to receive anything under 2. So I can't go back on that because he's going to see me as weak. Where you just sort of say, hey, look, it's out there. Just let me know what you want to do with it. And leave that space for that person to have the freedom to say yes, no, or I hate them, or I told you not to bring me anything under 2. That's great. It also strengthens a relationship that you just had with them, because now they trust you more.
Yeah, I love that. It's similar to the power in the silence of a salesperson
so
when
true.
they're closing and they ask, and it's just time to stop.
That's right.
And you're talking about just, hey,
Yep.
here it is.
That's it.
I mean, I can spend the entire podcast digging back into your production years.
I love it, right? Come on.
Like this is an executive who fully understands our space. So now let's start what I would call part 2 and part 3 of this pod. Well, actually, you know what? Before I do that,
Sure.
I've got one more.
Go ahead.
Maybe back in time, not really back in time because you're in it, but because of your experience in luxury, you were New York and you were Miami. There's a lot of agents right now and in the luxury sector who are like, oh, I want to do an expansion market.
Yeah.
The world is so connected. I want to work multiple markets, whether it's an expansion or just being licensed in multiple places. If an agent's thinking about that approach, 1, is it practical? 2, how do you do it?
So, sure, it's practical if you have that focus and that energy. It's building your brand, right? Your brand only gets delivered by the value that you give a client. So if you have a primary market, make sure that you are the best in whatever space that is. It doesn't have to be luxury. It could be new construction sales. It could be sort of like dealing with first-time home buyers. Whatever you're doing, make sure you're the best at it. Create a name and a brand for yourself. Brands are what you can actually go and duplicate in various markets. Michael Valdes is an agent in Miami, and Michael Valdes is an agent in New York is well and fine. But if I go and try to do Beverly Hills, nobody knows who Michael Valdes is because I'm not licensed in California. Now, if I actually go and say I've got the top price luxury market in these 2 cities that then have either a feeder market or that same buyer coming into those other cities, then it makes sense for me to do something because I've created a brand.
Yeah.
So you can actually do that, and it's encouraged. I mean, we encourage teams to go and create different markets. So because that market becomes your feeder market as well. You don't actually necessarily have to be licensed there either if you've created your brand.
That's very true.
You can go and find a showing agent or someone that is licensed in that state to come under your brand, and then you create a magical effect there because now your brand keeps growing.
You must know Stan Ponte.
He's one of my best friends.
Is he?
Yeah.
So Stan...
He actually got me to invest in a Broadway play last year that we both invested in.
Really? How's that doing?
It actually, well, it was nominated for 2 Tonys. It's not on Broadway now, but it's going to go and do a a national tour. But Stan is one of my best friends.
Let's link it up. Let's link up the Broadway show.
Real Women Have Curves.
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's link it up. I'll definitely go.
Yeah.
So I met Stan years ago. What you're describing about the feeder market reminds me of Stan Ponte. He's a Sotheby's agent out of Manhattan.
He does the trusted network.
So he would go into offices up and down the shoreline in Connecticut, throughout Connecticut.
Yeah.
He would do it once a week. He'd go into an office, maybe he'd present and somebody would do Q&A or whatever.
That's right.
He would do an office meeting once a week. He did this for years.
Yeah, I know.
And what did that create? He knew what his feeder market was, whether it was Jersey or Connecticut, for people that are going in and out of the city.
That's right.
And then he was the first choice, top of mind agent for every single agent in those feeder markets.
That's right.
For Manhattan.
100%.
And everybody would be like, oh, you got some, call Stan.
Call Stan.
Connect with Stan, right?
Yeah.
And he perfected that really well. So
yeah, one of my best friends.
good.
Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
All right. I want to go into some of the day stuff. I mean,
Sure.
I can't have a guy like you spend an hour with me and not ask you some of the questions. And certainly with the, history that you have with Realogy, formerly Realogy, and now Anywhere.
Sure.
I'd love to start there. You wrote an op-ed in Inman.
I did last week, yeah.
It landed with me. I mean, I thought we'll even link it up. We'll link the op-ed up. The direction that you were going on brand confusion.
Yep.
There's already brand confusion within Anywhere's
100%.
Company now.
Sure.
A lot of markets, I'm not going to speak for every market, but a lot of markets, a Sotheby's agent can't recruit a Coldwell agent, and a Coldwell manager can't recruit a Sotheby's agent. And so they stay away from each other, so they're kind of targeting everybody else. But
that's only the company-owned stores, right? So the franchise owners can go do whatever they want.
And the franchise stores do whatever they want. And, a consumer sometimes may be, I'm interviewing, two different, I'm interviewing CB and I'm interviewing, Sotheby, whatever. Right. And they don't understand. I mean, if they're two company-owned stores, they certainly don't understand that. A lot of the tools are, one's royal blue and one's navy blue. Right. So brand confusion now with, Compass being kind of the mothership if this deal closes, in the summer of 26. Just walk me through how confusing can this get? What do you think they're going to do if you want to pontificate?
Yeah. Well, look, here's where I start looking at it. Now it's going to be 10 brands, right? Compass at Properties in Christie that they acquired earlier this year, and then the 7 brands for Anywhere. So 10 brands. Of those, 5 are luxury brands. So Compass, Sotheby's, Coldwell Banker Global Luxury, Corcoran, and what am I missing?
On the luxury?
On the luxury
we have Christie's.
Side.
You mention Christie's and at Properties?
So those are the 5 that you have. Think about a consumer in one of those major luxury cities coming in. You have a Sotheby's agent and a Corcoran agent going in for the listing. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, you have a Compass agent coming in behind them and say, why are you going to sign with them? We own them. You might as well sign with me. By the way, I've already anecdotally heard this is happening. And so, and the deal isn't even close to closing.
Agents will use it at any advantage they can get.
Brother,
hey,
please.
By the way, Compass agents, I don't blame you. I'm not gonna. If you can win the listing,
I'm telling you, it's
very competitive.
But it's not. It's not synergistic.
Yeah,
it's cannibalistic. Mm-hmm. And when you start thinking about that, imagine now what's happening all within one entity, and that's going to be really difficult. And so it's going to be back to what we were just talking about of an agent having to have their own value distinction. What makes you different in the marketplace for someone to do business with you? Now you raise it up to a brand level. What makes you different from a Sotheby's to a Christie's to a Corcoran? What makes you different to be able to grab that $10 million listing in New York City? And I argue that it's not going to be the brand. It's going to be the Stan Ponte who's already created his brand.
Yeah.
So if you haven't gotten to your own brand level, then the brand and the card that you carry in your pocket matters. Mm-hmm. And that brand now has become almost homogenized because you've got 5 different people with different cards that can sit across the same owner of that $10 million listing because it's all owned by the same company, potentially.
Yeah. If Robert Revkin called you, I'm sure he has your cell phone number. If Revkin called you and said, Michael, nobody knows luxury like you do. Do I keep the Sotheby's brand? Do I just make it all Compass? Do I keep the Corcoran brand? Do I make it all Compass? Would you keep all the brands, get rid of some? What would you do with the brands?
Revkin is a dear friend, and we speak often. I'll leave it there. And so it's, look, he's a very great disruptor in our industry. He built a great brand by disrupting the markets.
He knows market positioning very well.
He absolutely does. I think what's different for Revkin is the idea of the franchise model. Franchise is very new to him. And the idea of now inheriting 7 franchise brands will be something that will be interesting to maneuver. I don't have the answer for him.
The franchise brands probably can't unwind those brands.
You cannot.
Company-owned, you can.
Company-owned, you can. Company-owned is only Sotheby's and Coldwell Banker and Corcoran. That's it.
And some of the offices, not all.
Some of them. That's it. That's it. Oh, very few of them, actually.
Yeah.
Very few of them. So when you start looking at it, I started doing the math. It's sort of like, I could be off on the math, but it was roughly 50,000 agents that are under company-owned stores across the 3 brands.
Yep.
And when you start thinking about 330,000 agents under the Anywhere brand, roughly half of that is international. So it doesn't really help you in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And when you start doing the rest of that math, the majority of those are franchised agreements that you can't supersede. If we were talking about, I wrote it in the article, if we were talking about sort of like data integration, like, if you wanted to try to do something with 330,000 Anywhere agents and then his 30,000 plus Compass agents, thinking you have almost 300,000 agents. 300,000 agents is a strong number when you start thinking about 1.3, 1.4 million agents at NAR, but that's not the right math.
Yeah.
Because it's not 300,000 agents in the U.S. So when you start looking at it, it's roughly about 80,000 agents, still about, a good percentage of what we're talking about. But we're talking about, about 12 to 15% of the NAR population. You can't really go in and control an industry from 12%. No. Right? You can disrupt it, and he's great at disrupting.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic.
Yeah. If retention holds at that level.
Yeah.
12%. But that's
exactly.
You're the first person I've seen really walk through the math. And I would argue those 50,000 or so that are, company owned that you could rebrand, those
you
are going to
force them.
Well, those are also going to be probably your best positioned offices.
That's true.
Like, you don't want to take the Greenwich Sotheby's and all of a sudden change the name, most likely, because it's been there a long time.
That's right.
Right. So,
That's right.
So you're now talking about your best positioned brands in a local market, because there's a hyper local perspective to this.
Look, the other thing that people are not talking about at all is now he owns both the Sotheby's and Christie's brand, right? Yeah. The 2 most famous auction houses in the world. I lived in London for 5 years doing the European network. I used to try to really get into the Sotheby's auction house to really work through that relationship. It took me almost a year and a half for them to even sort of see me. And I used to run my operations at the coffee shop of the Sotheby's auction house on Bond Street in London. And I would just wait until somebody would talk to me. And I would started with like department heads of different ones of the, the fine arts department or whatever it was. Eventually, they all became my best ambassadors to let me in the door. And I finally got to the chairman level as 5 chairman at Sotheby's auction in London. And then I actually got to the point where I was doing monthly meetings with the chairman, and they actually you had to build that trust. When I left in 2015 and moved back to the States, that all went away. So for over a decade now, they're still struggling, and imagine, it's sort of like if somebody is going through and selling somebody a painting worth 50 million euros, and you give them to an agent as a referral on the property, and they don't do a good job, their next 50 million euro painting is going to Christie's.
Yeah.
Right? Because they associate the brand as one brand, right? And so when that happens, they just stopped referring. They stop referring within brand. Imagine now what's going to happen if you've got 2 of the real estate sides of the 2 competing auction houses. The auction house is never going to talk to one another.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
They're competitors.
They're competitors, and they're going to be afraid of the cross-pollination of their client base.
I agree with that. I also, the dilution of some of the positioning of like a Sotheby's brand as an example, going into some different price points.
Yep.
The auction house doesn't love that.
I know.
They don't like that at all.
I know. Trust me, I know.
They want to keep a minimum standard where their name is presented, where agents are like, I want to work with everybody.
Sure.
And so there's already friction there within brand.
And by the way,
auction house and agent.
there used to be qualifications to actually get into the Sotheby's brand, and it went away.
Yeah,
that went away.
In most scenarios, it did.
Yeah, a newly licensed agent can carry a Sotheby's brand.
Hey, real quick, I've got something for you, and it's completely free. If you're serious about growing as an agent in this market, this is the single best resource that I can point you to. It's called BAMX, the #1 agent community built to help you close more deals and build a real brand. Inside, you'll get weekly content templates, video scripts, blogs, and emails done for you, and over 30 on-demand courses, like Sharon Travatz's 6-part productivity playbook. These are the same systems top producers like Andrew Undum, Chris Benjamin are using right now to win listings, grow their teams, and dominate their markets. Here's the best part. When you start your free 7-day trial, you're not just browsing a dashboard. You're getting the exact templates, video scripts, and local content packs agents are using right now to build up their brand and attract clients. You can literally start posting and creating hyper-local content today. And once you're inside, you'll also see why so many members stick around, because BAMX includes over $5,000 in built-in tools, just free inside of the program. That includes Zoodealio, your branded cash offer platform, so you can show up to every listing appointment with 4 offers in hand. Like nobody's doing that. And Mosaic, the client experience system that helps you keep those clients for life post-close. Between the training, the content, and those platforms, this is the best deal in real estate, period. We're basically paying you to become a member. Go to school.com/BAMX or hit the link below. Start your 7-day free trial and explore everything inside. If you decide to stay, your rate is locked in for life. See you in there. So I want to go macro with you on everything going on in the industry.
Yeah.
What are all these lawsuits about? I'm of the belief that this is an operating expense for most of these companies for the ability to rewrite the rules in the industry. Okay, I'm going to either engage in lawsuits, I'm going to defend lawsuits, and it's all part of my OpEx right now to be at the table to rewrite the rules that NAR has had to take a back seat on. How do you see it?
I think that's an interesting perspective. I haven't sort of heard it quite put that way, and I think that's an interesting perspective. I think the lawsuits happen in almost every industry, right? And what's really interesting to me is that the culmination of most of these lawsuits are happening with a singular law firm. And when you start looking at that, that's an interesting perspective as well. Did it raise a mirror for us as an industry? Sure. Is it an opportunity for us to do better? Sure. Is there now the idea of being forced by these lawsuits coming in, that actually is almost disadvantage to a consumer? Because then there's certainly ways to improve any industry. When you're forced on a lot of these independent brokerages that simply are afraid of lawsuits, there's a consolidation happening in our industry dramatically with these indie agents, then the voice of a consumer changes as well. Right? Because they don't have another choice except for the larger entities. And when the dust has settled, I think there's only going to be about 10 brands left.
Yeah. No, I'm in full agreement with you there. And when I look at the OpEx side of it, like I'm thinking the big portals, like those lawsuits. Yeah.
Sure.
Where they're just going back and forth at each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I could put it in
I
marketing.
still want an invite to the Super Bowl, so I'm not
I know
going to comment on that.
Listen, I want an invite to the Super Bowl.
It was all him.
I'll come to the Super Bowl, Andy.
There you go.
All right. You guys are building something very special.
It's amazing, actually.
It really is amazing because I think that people are putting you guys in a particular category, but those that are digging deeper on LPT are realizing, oh wait, no, this isn't a third brand of a successful model. There's really 2 models within a company that are supporting two totally different business models for
Two
the
different
agent.
brands.
Two different
Absolutely.
brands.
Yeah.
Why? So, I mean, you left EXP after that phenomenal growth run. And now you're on another phenomenal growth run. Why LPT? What do you see here?
It is the greatest model for the largest number of agents, and I'll explain why. On the LPT side, you've got two models. It's an agent hybrid model. So you do have a similar cloud-based model like what Real and EXP and Fathom and others have tried to produce. So that is usually like an 80-20 split with some sort of a cap. Now, there are a large number of brokerages that have a flat fee model. There is no one that has been able to merge both. That's what LPT did. They actually created the largest number of agents to be able to come into what is that price point in that marketplace. Now you add the idea of creating a completely different brand and creating a luxury-based brand. Look, we realize one thing. You just can't stick the word luxury to a brand and pretend you're luxury. It doesn't work. Others have tried to do it. And so it just...
Everybody has done that.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you, we created this brand. We were the first single entity, meaning non-franchise, single entity luxury brand to ever launch globally at inception. We launched in 19 states and 4 international destinations: London, Lisbon, Toronto, and St. Martin. We've moved over about $1.5 billion of production, and we actually have attracted some of the largest luxury agents in the country to join this brand that is less than 6 months old.
LPT Aperture.
Aperture. It's two different brands.
Yep.
LPT is one brand.
Just Aperture
is one brand.
Understood.
So,
Understood.
So I'm giving you Aperture stats right now.
Yep.
So on the LPT side, we are the fastest growing real estate company that's ever existed.
Let me just help for those listening real quick, because I know for sure there is a large group of agents listening right now that are like, wait a minute, I don't even know what, I maybe knew who Michael was, but I don't even know LPT.
Right.
Within LPT, there are two models that work for agents.
That's right.
And then you have Aperture,
which is a completely separate model.
And what's interesting about Aperture to me is that I know it's 6 months in.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to hold you to anything. But what's really interesting to me right now is there's a minimum standard.
Oh, there is. And we'll keep that. And I'll tell you why.
Of which is required to be an Aperture agent / an Aperture property.
That's right.
And that standard, which has been lost in other luxury brands over time, ends up diluting the brand.
That's right.
It makes it more of a common everyday brand, which is nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
But a minimum standard really works. It becomes like, oh, I want into that private. There's a 3-year waiting list to get into that private club. Like, I'm interested. But if there was no waiting list and I could get in, maybe I'm less interested.
That's right. It's like the Groucho Marx thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be a member of a club that'll have me as a member.
Yeah.
Right. It's sort of like, so it's the Aperture model is exactly that. It becomes, and it's dependent on geographic location, right? So the production minimums is an agent's last 12 months. We're looking at different things in different markets, roughly about a $10 million of production in the last 12 months as a floor. And that's per agent. So if you're a luxury team, we look at the aggregate of each team member.
Sure.
And then we look at roughly what 3 times the average sales price might be in your local MLS as the average sales price of your production. Those are the qualifications on Aperture. And some of the markets have much more elevated entry points like New York, Miami, LA. We actually have become one of the largest luxury brokerages now in Big Sky, Montana. There is such a great concentration of wealth. We have Martha Johnson, who was the number 22 luxury agent in the country. She did $500 million last year, just her and her son.
Wow.
And was 46 transactions.
Shout out Martha. Let's get you on the pod.
Martha's awesome. I'll get you her number. She's amazing. She would love it.
I'll come to Big Sky.
Go to Big Sky. That's an awesome one.
Yeah.
And
Montana, for sure.
There it is. And and she moved over from the brokerage that she was at. And then there were 12 other agents from that same brokerage that moved over just because she did. Wasn't a part of her team, but she created a great culture. And now we've attracted other agents from other companies as well there. But we've created a great infrastructure. We're doing some brick and mortar in some of the key locations that we have. And so we're opening up luxury cities around the world. This has not been done before. When you think about luxury, not everything in a geographic location is luxury, right?
Yeah.
And so we're now looking, Monaco is really close to announcement, Dubai, Mexico City. We're looking at some great destinations that will create exactly what you talked about, a luxury brand for that same buyer that's buying in all these different markets.
Yeah. If you're buying in Dubai, it's probably not the only place you're buying in.
Absolutely not.
Robert Palmer,
Yes.
who founded the company, started the company. A lot of people don't realize dude is self-funded.
Oh,
so
gosh, yes.
LPT, if they're in your market and you're looking at this company, this is a company that didn't go out and raise a bunch of money. It was self-funded.
Zero debt.
So just for those, like Robert is not, he's well known in the
Central Florida markets and in the mortgage business.
In the mortgage business and all
Right.
that. He's well known in the suite at the Super Bowl and Andy's suite. Like those 40 people know him really well. People know he's coming and
Right.
he's and went from LPT went from 35th in volume to or volume or transactions to number 10
Correct.
according to T360. And I think
Yes.
this year I was talking to Matt, it's going to be number 6.
Yeah.
And so that's in a 24-month span. Going from 30 or
Right.
3 years, going from 35 to 10 now to 6.
Right.
That's incredible growth. But
Fastest growing ever in our industry, by the way.
and there's a lot of agents that just are like, who? Robert who?
Right.
Robert Palmer's self-funded. The guy didn't raise a dime.
Correct.
What type of leader is Robert Palmer?
He's the reason that I'm here, right? It's like everyone was shocked when I left my prior position and coming to what was essentially a startup. And I came here because I believed in the model that's being built. I believed in his vision, and I believed in the leader that he is. And those are strong things for me. And we actually are such a great team because we think the same way. And I am fully invested in what this is. Because as I said earlier, unless I can create impact for others, I'm just not interested. And this is something that's going to create the largest impact for the largest number of agents. Allow them to be able to change their own lives. Because going back to that kitchen table, I know what it is to look in the eyes of someone else and know that they didn't get that listing or that the deal fell through or that, it's sort of like it's tough to get formula for their newborn. I know what that feels like. And that's what I want to change for somebody else. I want them to create their own legacy. I have mine. I want them to create their own. That's what interests me right now.
Dude, that's awesome. I've gotten to be around Robert a little bit and his internal team. And there are very few leaders, I'll say this, that you come across where everybody around them gets as passionate as you do and just did about the person.
Yeah.
Some of his internal team, they've been with him for years.
Oh, over decades.
And it's not just, and then you hear, team leaders, some of the biggest teams in the country right now are going over and joining LPT and Robert and the vision
Absolutely.
there. And every time I get around somebody, they speak with as much passion as you just did about the leader. And so that doesn't happen every day.
It doesn't happen by accident.
No, it doesn't. All right.
And when it does happen, it allows you to have the force to have the exponential growth that we have. And, we're building everything really internally. And to your point, people don't even know what we're building. And we're pre-IPO. We're planning our IPO next year. And so there's a lot that's coming and a lot more of the story being revealed as we get closer to public markets.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to sitting down with Robert. We're going to set that up soon.
Yeah, awesome.
This is coming out Q4 25.
Beautiful.
Just leave us with what? 26. Anything? Should we be glass half full? 26. How should we think about 2026?
Look, I think 26 is going to be an incredible year for the agents that prepare now. You have to prepare for. We always sort of say you prepare for the boom and the bust, and the other way around. And so when there's a boom, prepare for that bust, and then you win. But right now we're in this bust. We have been for a few years, as you stated. So those that are preparing now, which means getting your listings, making sure that you've got your CRM in place, making sure that you've got your value proposition in place. This is actually going to be, in my opinion, next year, one of the greatest years for real estate.
We know a boom is coming, whether it's next year or in the future, because we're in a bust. We're in a suppression of transactions. Does that mean should real estate agents, in preparing for a real estate boom, invest more today? Take the risk. Should agents be taking a heavier risk?
If this is your business, you have to do that. You have to be that brand that we talked about earlier. You've got to be able to, when the boom comes,
it's too late to spend the money.
It's not going to be too late to spend the money, but it's going to be crowded space.
Yeah.
Your messaging will not. Imagine when we go back. Did you spend any real money in 2020? You didn't really need to, right? 2020, 2021.
Right.
Everybody was buying, right? It's sort of like you didn't need to spend that much in advertising because everybody was buying.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't do that, you don't have that client base when the boom does come, and then you'll be chasing it.
It's expensive to buy Tesla stock today, but it wasn't 10 years ago.
That's right. So true.
That's what they'll be saying about LPT in 10 years.
Well, exactly right.
If you're still on the ship, I'm sure they will. Michael, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.